Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties, episode 3 for 2016. So I know we've had two 1 hour episodes, but we're back to our 30 minutes. And today we're going to be talking about the big controversy that happened, which is, obviously Australian of the Year, and maybe a couple of topics relating to, conservative attacks and, conservative attacks on Turnbull. And I've forgotten what the last one was. Well, we'll get to it anyway. So I guess the easiest place to start is introducing who's on today. We've got Tim over in Victoria
Howdy.
and Lee over in West Australia.
Good evening.
And of course, I'm Vickers here in the ACT. So let's open up with the Australian of the Year, which has attracted a lot of criticism from particularly conservative people. And but it's mostly to do with the appointment of um, Lieutenant General. Is it Lieutenant General?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lieutenant General. Sorry, I should
Lieutenant
pronounce.
General.
Yeah, I was about to
Da-
say I should be pronouncing it like the Australians. So Lieutenant General David Morrison, who won it for his 2013 speech, where he wanted abusers of women to basically find another job other than the army, which I agree with him
and
definitely.
it's important to add that it wasn't written by him. It was written by one of the other fellow nominees, Kate
Okay,
McGregor.
to be fair, she did say that he spoke it, therefore owns it. I think there's some sort of understanding between speechwriters and people who give speeches on this one. I'm not gonna defy the convention, so I'm gonna say that David Morrison spoke it. Sorry, gave that speech. So I digress. It's been a bit of an interesting topic for me in terms of people saying that this is a deeply politicized event, and it basically forced me to go back and look at past winners. And quite frankly, it's been politicized ever since it started. It's been awarded to AIS sports professionals, public servants. It's been largely politicized for as long as it's existed. It's just
Mm.
surprising that it's really ramped up in the last 3 years that people have been going, well, this is too political. I don't know.
Well, what's really happened in the past few years is that the Australian of the Year it's become a social justice advocate position where the winner is meant to lecture the rest of the Australians how bad we're doing on these certain issues, and us ordinary citizens are so terrible, and I'm here to improve you and make you better people. I mean that's what people really can't stand
I don't
about.
understand the objection there. I would love to be a better person.
Well, I mean,
Or do you,
sorry, go.
Yeah,
no,
go
you
on.
go.
I was just going to say, I mean, one of the things that, I mean, obviously as a libertarian, we think it's worthless, more or less. But I think even if you accept the
It's
premise
the
that there should
status.
be some sort of Australian of the Year, if you look at the list of people, like, there's no one in the list, or maybe there's a couple of people in the list who actually weren't already high profile to begin with. Like, sometimes it's pegged as something as, like, giving recognition to a person for their commitment to the community. But really, like, it's full of sports people who are already high profile.
Artists,
People
public
who've won
servants.
gold. Yeah, yeah, and very prominent business people, which there's only a handful. So it's really. I mean, you guys like Hulk, Paul
So,
Hogan, in 1985. So this is after he would have done Crocodile Dundee. Like, he would have been one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and he gets the Australian of the Year. You got Kathy Freeman in '98, like at the peak of her career, and you just look at the list and there's just no one on there. Maybe Patrick McGorry is the only one I can see that wasn't very prominent to begin with, but it's just like, what's the point? You're essentially saying, well, you've done all this stuff that you're already really well known for, and we're going to say, yeah, here's this thing.
so I am going to quote Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globe Awards and say that it's basically an award given by public servants to people that they really want to meet, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
That's effectively what it is.
Yeah.
And to me, it is a direct mirror of what was the what was it, the Knights and Dames thing that Abbott brought back,
Mm.
which was canned shortly after Turnbull came in. I mean, the Knights and Dames thing was pretty much just Tony Abbott making captain's picks on who he wanted to really meet.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm also glad that conservatives have finally realised. I mean, they talk about how much they love all these government institutions, but the Australian of the Year is a perfect example of what eventually happens to these government institutions. They're captured by advocates who use these institutions to influence the rest of the society, which was what we've seen with the last few appointments of basically social justice activists.
Correct. Yeah, but I don't necessarily have a problem with them being social justice advocates. My main
Well,
issue, my
well, it's
main
the fact
issue.
that they're anointed as they're better than everyone else. I mean, it's the
Well,
government
they
saying,
don't. No, no, they don't actually have to be, right? Here's the thing: the Australian government can put out a "This is the Australian of the Year" award. We don't necessarily have to accept that. We can just be like, yeah, okay, who cares? Um,
Yeah,
and
except
for
that comes with a lot of free media. Like, let's be
yeah,
real. Like, this, like, it really is a megaphone for whoever it is. Like, I mean, how many people? I mean, Rosie Batty was sort of known, but I mean, essentially, we got a whole year of Australian of the Year. Rosie Batty says this, or Australian of the Year. Rosie Batty says that. Like, it is a really big platform
and
for.
and and and,
and it
and what I'm saying,
becomes the Australian of the Year. It's a person because they have been chosen. You're not allowed to criticize them. Like, oh, they were chosen as Australian of the Year. How dare you,
are they?
question their
Are they? I
wisdom?
mean, are
Yeah.
they? I mean, we're small and we do criticize them, but I'm surprised that it doesn't actually get out there more, right? Like, I'm genuinely surprised. I mean, you see Andrew Bolt criticizing this election of David.
Well, you see, well, I'm talking about the mainstream media that they treat, Adam Goods, Rosie Batty as these people you can't criticize. I mean, obviously there's the normal dissenters such as Andrew Bolton, Mark Latham, but they're only a small segment of the media. I mean, I'm talking,
Well,
the
yeah, no, but the thing is, like, when it's someone like Mark Taylor or Steve Waugh or someone like
Inoffensive sports people.
basically people that Howard picked,
Yeah,
Peter Cosgrove, I guess. Like the left criticize it as well. So it's not just there's Andrew Bolt, and if you go to an Andrew Bolt, if you go to a Mark Latham and say, well, who should be Australian of the Year? They would say, well, Mark Taylor was a good pick, or Peter Cosgrove was a good pick, or whatever. So
yeah.
it's
They'd say the other guy,
yeah,
basically. Yeah,
and it's really one of those things that it is really partisan, um, and people criticize it when
it's
it's their turn.
yeah, yeah.
it's
So this is precisely why I'm with Lee on this one. I'm just like I don't actually see the point of the Australian of the Day award. Sorry, Australian of
no,
the
no, no. There's no point to it.
yeah. And
It's basically another area of the culture wars where both left and right try to influence the institutions the way that they want.
correct. But this is actually the other thing. And I've heard people mention the independence of this panel several
Ugh.
times. Um, and I sit there and I look at it and go like, so get your balls, get some balls or something and fucking actually make a decision. Because I think the panel, as it's currently configured, is operating on, hey, this person's made a lot of media attention for themselves. We need to kind of go and see them. Sorry, we need to kind of meet them. And I don't think that is all that conducive to an Australian of the Year. It's not actually. Look, okay, I make the exception for Rosie Batty because Rosie Batty's actually been working in that field for a long time. She's done a lot of good work. But Adam Goods essentially just pointed out a little girl that was being racist. That was it. And David Morrison, as much as I agree with him, right, he's not being given anything for his military record, which is what frustrates me because he actually does have a decent military record. Um, and I'm sitting there going like, it can't be about what you say; it has to be about what you do for Australia. And I think it's like verging on the Nobel Peace Prize, where the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to George Bush sorry, not George Bush, was
Barack
awarded
Obama.
to Barack Obama in 2009 before he even like did anything on the basis that he wasn't George Bush.
Yep.
And I think we like that. My sort of feeling about this is the natural response because this award is run by the government. We don't necessarily have to accept it. Is that we as citizens should ridicule the award if it's handed out in such a manner. Uh, but that's not really the way Australia kind of works, and it's not really the way it works with high prestige awards like this.
And I think the general public has become quite sick of this award. I mean, given last year that they repeatedly booed the former Australian of the Year, says that they don't think much of the award either.
I'm inclined to agree, and that's what I'm like. That is the
Well,
response
I
that I'm
mean,
hoping.
it's a question of has it ever really been like when they give it to someone who's inoffensive, like Mark Taylor, or Lee Kernaghan, like those are completely inoffensive.
You
People
really
like them.
like talking about Mark Taylor getting
Well,
the
it's
Australian
just the one
Award.
that's sitting on top of the list. But like it's Kathy Freeman. You pick Kathy Freeman. Well, everybody loves Kathy Freeman. Like there's nothing offensive there. There's lots of
Yeah.
people in here who are
I
just
mean,
Fred Hollows. Like how can anybody hate Fred Hollows? The guy
oh
saved
wait,
mankind.
They
well,
no,
Okay,
the
do they? Well,
the gay community
you
does hate
haven't
Fred
been following
Hollis.
the news.
okay, well there you go.
Yeah,
I haven't even followed. But like there's lots of people in here. John Farnham in 1987. Just after like his biggest record. Like how can anybody really? They could sneer at for whatever reason. But like
which
it's
gets back to what I
it's
said, right?
it's
It's
either
part so
meaningless because
it is
it's given
part
to
of the
somebody
so
who doesn't who's
no,
already really popular, or it's controversial because. And nobody cares, but nobody still like. I don't think anybody goes, "Oh my gosh, wow! I think so much more of Alan Border because he was made of Australian of the Year in 1989."
so like I said earlier, it's basically public servants handing out an
Yeah,
award to people they want to meet.
yeah.
And I think we need to all adopt the Ricky Gervais approach to this. Like, just have a pint and just take the piss out of the Australia Day Awards. Right? We can all do
Well,
this. We
I
all
just think
just have pints in our hands.
I actually think it's unseemly to have them, even in the first place. Like I think it's I heard somebody say it's the government giving out a gold star to a particular Australian, and I just I don't think there's any single person who sums up all of what it means to be Australian. Even this it's 1960 to what? Yeah, so
No,
56 years. Even those 55, 56 people can't totally sum up what it
so
means to be Australian.
no, okay. So in 2016, if I was handing out the award, it'd be to those two blokes, right, who
Yeah.
stopped that robbery and had the most Australian interview ever. I'm just like, that is Australian of
Well,
the
if
year.
you want to see how elite is this thing, like acknowledgement that this is kind of really just an elite thing, is they've now got an Australian local hero award. So since 2003, they've had basically somebody who just does something in a very one specific part of the community, which really
Okay.
is just an acknowledgement that the Australian Year is not for regular people; it's for people who are already incredibly high profile and successful.
My
Yeah.
my favorite recommendation was, I'm sure you've all heard, Corey Bernardi said that Gina Reinhardt should be Australian of the Year.
Hmm.
Obviously, he
Uh,
did that to make a point about how unlikely it would be she would win it.
So I disagree about that because Gina is much larger than any Mir award.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, come on.
And
I couldn't resist.
and to be real, I mean, like if you look at all these people, it's essentially entertainers, sports people, and public services. You mentioned there's less of those these days. It's now moving into scientists and
Well,
indigenous
actually,
leaders and this sort of stuff. So
so I,
it's
so I was actually I found that interesting. So most of the science winners were in the 80s and 90s. There's been one science winner in this decade,
Well,
um,
there was
and that
like
was
Fiona
climate
Wood.
change.
She was a good winner. I mean,
well,
the
I
burn
mean, it
specialist.
depends how you define like if you just say broadly anybody who works in any sort of vaguely scientific field. So you got Fiona Stanley, she's an epidemiologist. You've got Ian Fraser's an immunologist. Fiona Wood's
Uh,
a plastic surgeon. I mean that's obviously it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
physics or
I was
chemistry
just
or
like,
whatever, but
there's a category called medicine where there are a
yeah,
lot more winners. So
sure,
yeah, sure. If you include the medical sciences, then yeah,
yeah,
there's been a lot more science winners. Um, but actually, the thing is, the Australian of the Year didn't actually grind my gears as much as the Senior of Australian of the Year did. Um, and effectively, it's because it was won by a guy who's the champion of the lockout laws, the bane of Sydney's existence right now. Basically, they handed Maud Flanders a Senior Australian of the Year. That is that is literally what comes to mind.
yeah. Well, I mean it's a trendy thing. Like I mean all these
How is
things
that
lean
trendy?
left. Like all these things like lean left. All these awards, the whole thing is
I mean, the outrage machine about the government must solve this problem or that problem is what's in fashion at the moment. I mean, that's what everyone wants, and so of course they're going to give that award to somebody like that.
Look. My personal belief is that public health Nazis shouldn't get any airtime, just because they're horrendous, horrendous people.
Sure, neither
We're
neither
agreeing
of
with
us
you.
will disagree with that. It's just
Yeah,
that's not how the world works. If it's
yeah,
I
we're
know.
just saying like what you expect.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like there's if libertarians got to run the Australian of the Year, it would look very, very different. In fact, it'd probably look like Libertarian of the Year, which gets handed out at the Friedman Conference, which is, always the suggestion is David Leinhelm,
Actually,
and then once we give it to him, we have to try and scratch around to find somebody else to give it to.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna throw a plug for Tim Andrews here and say that you should get your Friedman
Yeah,
tickets
you should.
while you still can. He's not paying me, and I expect a check in the mail for this post.
I've
But
got my
yes,
ticket already.
yeah,
We're part of the Spiderweb of Hate group, so we get our checks from the Koch brothers and Gina Reinhardt and Rupert Murdoch all the time anyway. So
I am.
if my
yet to meet- I
webcam
am-
was on, you could see me rolling in the big fat stacks of money that I'm receiving from, big oil and big tobacco and all the rest of it.
I am yet to meet Coke, and that's
Yeah.
really bothered me. I've been to the US 3 times now, never met Coke once. This is,
You're not leveraging that evil, mustache twirling ability that you have as a shill for every bad thing in the world, TM.
What can I say? Freedom doesn't have all the perks that we thought.
Yeah, there's nothing in my mailbox.
Okay, so here's a question. Since we were going to talk about this for about 20 minutes, say you're Prime Minister for a day, and would you scrap Australian of the Year? Take into account, so this is a real politic question, so this is going to be, take into account that there is no upside from scrapping it, because it's a completely meaningless award, but people like the notion that it's there, and the downside is everybody gets mad at you about something that means nothing.
So I would actually keep it there, and like I said, I would hand it to those two blokes on Sunrise. Sorry, was it Sunrise? Yeah, it was Sunrise. The two guys who with the robbery thing at the
Yeah.
Porto. I totally hand it to them. In fact, I would I would set a guideline on this independent committee that they're only allowed to choose a candidate based on YouTube videos.
that would actually prove to be very interesting. You might get friendly Geordies. Have you ever seen that guy?
I don't mind if Friendly Jordy got one. I mean, some of his videos are hilarious. And this is as someone who sits there and cringes at really bad economics being discussed.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind if he got one for a really funny video. Like, it doesn't offend me at all. People getting stuff for stuff that they've done rather than their profile is much more appealing to me for an Australian of the Year.
So you'd have it like a larrikin of the year.
Why not? Why not? Isn't that what being Australian's all about? We are larrikins, right?
Or the Legend of the Year award.
Legend of the Year.
Ah, that's what it should be. Australian Legend of the Year award. In fact, we should start that.
Sure, alright. Nominations?
Yeah.
So obviously the two guys who stopped the robbery.
Obviously, the two guys are stopping. So obviously, this is going to be for next year in 2017.
Okay, alright, sure.
Yeah,
We'll work on it. We'll come up with a list.
We'll come up with a list. No. We'll sort shit out. We'll make a Taking Liberties Legend of the Year.
Legend
Sorry,
of the Year award.
Australian.
And it only has to be based on YouTube videos.
It is only
Yeah.
based on YouTube videos. So if you're out there and actually listening to this, get on YouTube.
So if you cure cancer, it does not matter. Only if you do it on YouTube. It only matters if you
Only
capture it on
if-
YouTube.
only if you
Or
capture,
if you
not
describe
on
it
YouTube,
in a
it's happening.
hilarious way.
Yeah,
or if you describe it in a hilarious way. No, seriously, if it's not on YouTube, I didn't see it.
yeah. Tim, would you scrap Australian of the Year if you had your day in the Prime Minister's chair? Given
Well, I
that
did
no
like-
upside and
I-
all downside.
I did like Corey Bernardi's idea of giving it to Gina Reinhardt just as a big, fuck you to everyone who
As long as
hates
it's
her.
not, as long as it's not Parent of the Year, because that would be a bit awkward.
Ah,
When I saw that, I was just like, that'd be perfect. I would just give it to her and just see what would happen.
Yeah.
I'm just like I like everything about this because it's effectively turning it into a troll award.
Yeah.
And we all know how I feel about trolling.
See, actually somebody that
Well,
probably could have, you could
point to a
seriously have
business
considered for
success
Australia of the
as
Year.
well. So you could have a nice explanation about why you're giving it to her. So it would be a legitimate award for her, but it'd also be, pissing a whole lot of people off who, thought, no, it's got to go to social justice people.
See, I mean, I would actually just turn it into a private committee and make it like just a not-for-profit organization, and
It's already a non-profit organization.
is it?
Yeah, it's funded by mostly Commonwealth Bank and like a whole bunch of other. It's not paid for by the Australian taxpayer.
Oh, really? Okay, well, then
Uh,
I just don't show up. I just say, look, it's not our choice. Let somebody else choose it. Well, and like just several, just make
it's
it
just-
totally
So,
private.
so you're going to have a crony capitalist solution to the
No,
Australian of the Year.
okay. If I had to pick of every, the members of the committee, I'd pick every single ridiculous, pathetic lefty and put them on the committee, and then just watch it fall apart of its own accord, because these,
That's already what it has.
well, then I wouldn't even show up to the ceremony then. I mean, like,
Yeah,
I mean,
see,
I know
that is the That's actually the problem, right? Basically, they've already done that. It's just
Yeah.
they don't have. They don't. It's just the prime ministers still turn up and give it credibility.
yeah. Well, I just say it's not
they
not any of my
the
business.
left, they didn't get their, really like first choice candidate. There was this petition to make Gillian Triggs Australian of the Year.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing so hard.
So you can make this award really, really much more fun.
You you definitely could. Wow, I don't know
So,
why.
so
I
they
find
could
that
be
so-
worse. They could be worse.
It could be. They could be. And what was I? Sorry, we're gonna segue really badly into our second topic, which I've completely forgotten now.
It was the conservative comeback that they're trying to make against Turnbull.
Yeah, that's right.
I have only
Yeah.
one thing to say on that. Wow. It's it's pretty sad actually. I mean, if you're you're the lead wave of your conservative invasion back into the Liberal Party is Eric Abetz and Kevin Andrews, I think you're pretty much up the creek without a paddle. I mean, really, there's
Yeah, two of the worst performing members.
and it's just one of those things that, like, I mean, okay, it's one thing I always bemoan is the lack of actual ideology within the Liberal Party. Like, there's people who don't believe anything, and I think that's essentially you've got maybe two people who are kind of lefties, and Turnbull would be one of them, and then you've got maybe half a dozen conservatives, actual conservatives, and then everybody else still doesn't give a crap. Like, it's it's really just
So, like the rest of society, you're saying that the
Well-
Liberal Party is representative of most of society.
maybe, I guess, but it just, I mean, it's just, I mean. It's just
The
it's
way
a
that
fight of no stakes. Like, there's just nothing. I mean, maybe some pre-selections, but we're talking about pre-selections of like Bronwyn Bishop and what's the old guy in Parliament?
Philip Ruddock.
Philip Ruddock. Like, it's such it's
But they
the
also wanna
lowest
get
of
rid
low
of-
stakes.
They want to get rid of Angus Taylor and Craig Kelly.
Okay, 4 people out of a party of what, like 100? Like,
220. Sorry. They have 102 people in
Yeah.
Parliament.
so it's it's not. I mean, okay. Some of the, like, from what I understand, that Angus Taylor guy's actually pretty decent. Or maybe there was one of the younger guys. He
it's
actually
not
was actually
just, getting
quality,
rid of the
but
Deadwoods.
we're still talking about like less than half a dozen seats, which there might be a pre-selection battle over. Like, that's not a. It's kids standing at the side of the road like flicking stones at each other. It's not a war within the party. It's some people griping at some other people. Like, it's just zero stakes. And even for politics, it's zero.
It's not zero stakes. The stakes are so low that they're tripping on them.
Yeah. I think they're sort of gently grazing over the top of them as they sort of glide by. A hovercraft wouldn't have a problem overcoming that barrier. That thing sits on the ground. Even those like stupid hoverboard things would be able to get over that thing without any issues.
Well, they're not actually hoverboards, but yeah.
The thing that gets me about this conservative white-handing is that they think that because the people who listen to 2GB like them, that there's going to be this groundswell of public support for please Tony Abbott come back.
Mate. 2GB kills it in the ratings. They get a solid 7% of the whatever listener base.
But Abbott was dumped because most of the people outside of 2GB thought that he wasn't doing a good job as Prime Minister.
And also, he didn't do anything. Like, this guy's supposed to. I mean, this is the thing that gets me about this whole thing. Like, they treat it like Abbott was this, like, principled,
Yeah, he was the
go-getting,
Messiah.
and he did nothing. He betrayed every single principle he stood for, did
Well,
absolutely shit all.
he
They
got rid of
dumped him
all of
for it.
Labor's bad policies, but then it was just
And then put it.
Which,
No, that's true.
no, it
He
came up
got
to
rid of
4
Labor's bad
policies,
policies
not
and
even
then put
that.
in his own.
He... Did he even
Sorry.
get rid of the carbon tax compensation? This is I was thinking about this today. Like, so okay, they
No.
scrapped the carbon tax. No,
They're still talking about it.
yeah. So I mean, that's an actually legitimate question, and they totally squibbed it. Like, 3 years after the fact. And there's just so essentially what you point to is they repealed the tax side of the carbon tax, not the actual entitlement side as well, which is also a huge issue. Okay,
Well,
you
actually,
turned back to the
so
boats.
the
All
LDP
right,
had
give
a
them
hand
that.
in that one. The LDP had a hand in that one.
yeah. That was one of our first grade achievements.
Keeping the tax cuts in place.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because it's a tax cut.
Yeah.
okay, well, fair enough. Yeah, but I know wasn't there a whole bunch of
No, the
handouts as well?
entitlements are
Well, I thought
no,
there was
no.
actual legitimate, not just like compensation talking about they were give money to people.
Oh no, that's still no. So the compensation that was in place was mostly tax cuts.
Oh, was it? Okay.
There was some other stuff like fiddling around New Start and stuff like that, which they kept around. But the way they jigged it up is they prevented future increases in New Start, which pissed off the left, obviously. But
Obviously.
whatever. Like it's numerically, it hasn't.
You look at
changed.
New Start the wrong way and the left get pissed off, so it's not exactly,
Yeah.
hard thing to achieve. But nevertheless, like the list of achievements which you can point to for Abbott is very small compared to the complete screw-ups, the complete own goals, including Bronwyn Bishop and Knights and Dames and all the rest of it. Like, it's just, I mean, it just shows you that the right is just as, like, got their heads up their own asses as much as the left do, because
And I
left do
love
the same
that
about Gillard.
it's-
Well, it's always about personalities. That's why they line up behind Abbott because he's their man.
Yeah.
It's the same way that the left lined up behind Hockey because he's their man.
And now, Abbott clearly that he's no longer Prime Minister. The Prime Ministerial mask is now off. He's just going to be Mr. Social Conservative now.
Yeah.
But it's actually interesting because he actually talks like I read some of the stuff on his speech and I found myself agreeing with a lot of the stuff that he said, with relation to that government should be less intrusive and things like that. And I'm just like, isn't it great that once conservatives don't have any power, they suddenly find they're in a libertarian? It's just like, oh wow, now I don't have power.
That wasn't that wasn't the conclusion that his speech was that therefore this is why same-sex marriage should not be legal.
Yeah. Which is why, like, look, we all saw
His speech said a
we
lot
all-
of things.
but we all saw my post on his, like, my conclusion on his on his speech, which was essentially he's gone to that really well-known ex-KCD comic where he's basically saying we should have freedom of speech. Yes, you should have freedom of speech, but when people ignore your argument, when that is your only argument, it's because you've lost and you don't have any arguments, right? And we're showing you the door and saying you're out, you're done, right? Please get out. He's got nothing to, like, realistically, he has nothing to offer the Liberal Party or even.
Do
Well,
you think
that
Abbott
can be
would
said
get-
of pretty much the bulk of the entire
it
caucus
can.
of the Liberal Party. Like, most of them stand for nothing. Most of them have no independent thought of their own.
No, but
You couldn't even, like, I reckon if you honestly did a survey of Liberal MPs and said, give me, explain some aspect of political philosophy, they wouldn't even know what you're talking about. You'd be like, you might as well send them that in Mandarin for all, they can actually understand the concept. So, it's
well, it's not as if they're not.
I mean,
they're not idiots. They do know. Like, I'll often hear them mentioning people like Edmund Burke or Jeremy Bentham.
they probably read that name on the
that's just
underside of like
throwaway
a juice.
to the-
Which
You
is
know.
also true. It's a throwaway to the intellectuals in the crowd. But like the reality is, while Abbott may have had something to offer Australia and something to offer the people, he squandered every opportunity.
Yeah, you had your chance and you blew it. So
Yeah. He's got.
Well,
he's
I
Get
guess
over it.
I guess people would, the diehard conservatives would say, well, yeah, but John Howard as well. So
Well,
they'd
no,
say, well,
Australians-
he had a chance and he
no,
screwed it.
no, 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 no. John Howard was an opposition minister
Or if it's just a
who
leader.
then got deposed for being a poor performer, and then became the best out of a bunch, and then
and
came,
he learnt from his yeah.
yeah, he learned from his mistakes, and he actually had something to deliver. Right? He basically incorporated a lot of fight back in what when he came to the 1996 election, a lighter version of a fight back. But like seriously, like the comparison to Howard is just ridiculous because Howard always took his ideas to the people. Abbott did not. Abbott was
And
always running from his office.
out of the 4 or 5 months that Abbott's been out of the job, it's clear from what he's been writing and doing, he's learnt nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
I
look,
mean,
Well, he
and
learned
that's
nothing when he was as prime minister. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is like people are like giving him opportunities to be sensible and to ditch hockey and to do and to make changes, and he just
and
barreled on it. In Knights and Dames is a great example, and Bronwyn Bishop, great examples of somebody who just clearly has no idea what the hell's going on.
and with that, I think I want to call it a night and this episode. So we'll be back next week with another episode. Who knows what'll happen in the next week that'll cause us to rant on the show.
Parliament's back this week.
Oh,
Yeah.
that might let the show start. All right, so I'm guess goodbye from me. Catch you next week.
So yeah.
See ya.